Hello and welcome to The Changemakers with me, Michael Heyman. Now, my guest today has a global call to action. The business recognises the potential of the 1 billion people living with a disability today. She's Caroline Casey, the campaigner and founder of Valuable, a campaign to kickstart business into positive action. Legally blind herself, she has dedicated her life to boosting disability inclusion. At the age of 28, she left corporate life and trekked 1,000 kilometres across India to raise awareness and funds. Today, she's inspiring people around the world with a message of hope, change and potential. Caroline, welcome to The Changemakers.
Thank you very much. I just realised how old I am.
Well, don't worry about your age. You're a proper changemaker. I mean, frame this issue for us in terms of global disability. Tell us about it.
Okay, I'm going to do stats. So there's 1 billion people in the world who have a disability. 800 million of that 1 billion acquire the disability between the ages of 18 and 64. You are 50% more likely to experience poverty if you have a disability, 50% less likely to have a job, and a 3% less likely to have a qualification. The levels of exclusion and marginalisation and discrimination for disability is still huge. A UN report last year, or Human Rights report in 2017, said the lives of people with disabilities have not really improved in 20 years.
Right, so I get this as an issue.
It's a big issue.
It's a big issue,
Yeah.
And it's an issue that governments around the world will talk about and do stuff about. But your message is that business needs to get involved and make a difference. Why business?
So I'm obsessed with the fact business is the most powerful force on the planet. And so if business recognise the value and the worth of that market of 1 billion people, which is worth 8 trillion, if they value it.
So don't treat me as a victim, treat me as an opportunity.
Treat me as an opportunity. We're not charity cases. We are human beings with potential, the ability to contribute. And if you see that potential and you value it, so if business includes and they see the value, society will include. If business excludes, then society will exclude. And you have to remember, of the 1 billion people in the world with a disability, just say there are 2 people that love that person. This affects 45% of our global population, and every one of us at some point in life is going to experience this.
Now, I can tell you are a very persuasive person. So
I'm passionate about this topic.
So when you knock on the front door of corporations around the world and you meet the chief exec, tell us what you're telling them. How do you pitch it?
Okay, so this is my pitch. I actually think that inclusive business for disability leadership, because I believe leadership is key. I think disability is the next great brand differentiator that is here. So we've seen companies leverage off green, do good stuff, use social mission and purpose to help their brand. This is a brand opportunity. This is a talent acquisition and retention opportunity. This is access to new market. So who wants to lead in this space? Who wants to be the early adopter? Who wants to be the pioneer? This is a 1 billion opportunity.
Right, good pitch. But obviously, as any good entrepreneur knows, is that quite often they're dealing with the problem of no. So what happens how do you turn that into, I get it in top line terms, but it's very difficult for me to do anything about this as a chief exec. What are you asking to do?
So why don't we just point to all the great ways that business have handled problems of social change before? So my big thing is, when you find great leaders and great brands, then others are inclined to copy them, right? So when Sheryl Sandberg stood up and leant in with Facebook behind her back and that name, it completely transformed the issue of gender. It's not like it wasn't being done before. So as far as I'm concerned is, well, let's see what we've done with green, let's see what we've done with gender, let's see what we're doing LGBTQ.
Are there enough Sheryl Sandbergs? I'm not sure Facebook is a great case study at the moment, but are there enough corporate leaders that see this as the opportunity?
We see not yet, because I think disability has been framed traditionally as a charity or a medical or a sympathy issue, rather than seeing this opportunity, a market-based model. And our job right now is we're not just talking about the employment of people with disability, we're talking about the full supply chain, suppliers, members of the community, talent, consumers. This is a supply chain issue.
Do you ever get passed over to the CSR department? I'd
CSR,
imagine that's not a great department for you.
So for me, I do not think disability is a D&I issue, a diversity inclusion issue. I honestly believe this is a leadership issue, it is a brand issue, it is a culture issue, it is a market issue. Now, the only way we can get this to happen is we look at some brilliant companies out there who are leading in this space and say, can we have more of this, please? Channel 4. Look what Channel 4 have done. We're sitting here having an interview, TV. Channel 4 transformed the way the Paralympics was presented to us. And so therefore people with disabilities are the people that are actually broadcasting it. So I think Channel 4, Barclays, great opportunity to bank, looking at consumers and how they're engaging with consumers. Microsoft, looking at accessibility. Apple,
So, good
universal
case
design.
study. Right, okay, lots of things to get optimistic about, but you've set up a campaign, Valuable. Tell us a little bit about Valuable as really that agent of change, and what are its goals?
So Valuable it really wants to position disability equally on the global leadership business agenda, to see the value and worth. I really fundamentally believe if we have leaders talking about this in places of influence like Davos, so what Valuable wants to see in the next year is 500 companies tabling disability on their board agenda. I want to find 5 Sheryl Sandbergs, and I want this main stage Davos 2019.
So qualify the 500. Any 500? A big 500? What are they? Fortune?
I would like to see
500
global
companies?
brands, but it
Global
doesn't have to be the
brands.
global headquarters. It could be the UK headquarters of a global brand. And we also do need to see medium-sized business as well, because actually a lot of the great action happens in small and medium business. But to make this critical and to move, we need to put this on global business agendas.
But it's interesting. I mean, you make the point rightly about things like the Paralympics, people getting really behind them. I mean, we all remember London 2012, how exciting it was for this city to be part of that movement. But in terms of the shift, the nudge, the tipping point that it takes to get that from great big marquee type occasions onto that boardroom agenda, what has to happen?
Well, there's a few things. First of all, we need to highlight the best practice that already exists at small, medium and large companies. It does exist. And we need to shout about that positively and say, look, it can be done. But the critical thing for me, the thing that I think is going to move the dial, is when I have a CEO sitting in this chair saying, you know what, I want to do something about this. When I find the Paul Pomans, who actually stood up with us at One Young World. But I've got to say to you, the only way we can do that, we would like to commission global research about the disability experience of leaders in the top 100 companies in the world.
So you mentioned One Young World as the Global Youth Forum. You've spoken there. In fact, you were there in Colombia and you did a fairly remarkable horse trekking journey. Tell us a little bit about that and tell us what the message was that you gave at One Young World.
Well, the messages are all still the same, and but you have to understand this is very personal to me.
Yes, I can
and
see
I
that.
really understand the dynamic. I actually am registered blind. I can't see you. I mean, I can't see you from here. It was at 17 years old that I found out I was registered blind. My parents knew I was when I was young, but they brought me up as a sighted child because they did not want my life limited by a label of disability. So when I discovered that I had a disability at 17, I did not want it, and I hid it for 11 years through business school, even when I got into Accenture.
Okay, I want to come back to One Young World in a minute then. Because I mean, I think you've raised a really big point, which is that you led a life.
Yeah, I did.
Where effectively you had to basically tell people things that weren't the truth. I mean, how was it like living that life? I mean, you went to work at Accenture, one of the, a great company. A great company.
It was a brilliant company.
But but nobody knew.
No, because this was, you got to remember, I graduated from school in 1989 and then from college in 1997, and like, I mean, when anybody goes to an interview, do you shout about what you're not great at? So for me to say that I was,
but presumably you
blind,
now feel that this is part of what makes you great, isn't it? It's part of your driving passion, isn't it?
Well, I can't. I am who I am. But I will say that my sight is just a metaphor for many of us who carry things. You know, I believe what we should be aiming for is universally inclusive cultures where every human being that comes into our business can reach their potential as they are, authentically as they are.
Yeah.
My disability, I hid it because I didn't want you not to give me a job, because I would think you might think about me, that's tricky. Don't want a blind person.
What was the moment for you when you realised I can hide this no longer?
It was coming a long time. You know, from 17 to 28 is 11 years. And I used to think if I worked harder and it was funny, I could distract. It became exhausting. I was 11 years doing it, and I had done really well.
It's extraordinary, right?
No, it is extraordinary. And I sometimes think, is that true? Yeah, it is true. It's my story. But I don't think it's more extraordinary than a lot of people who carry secrets inside to try and fit in and to be accepted and to belong. I think this feeling of belonging is very real for all of us. And vulnerability is very difficult, and to admit that I couldn't see would be very vulnerable. But that tipping point happened in October of 1999, when actually I had damaged my sight further because I wasn't seeking help. And life had become very, very difficult. And I think more importantly, my father had also brought me up to be myself, and I knew I wasn't being myself anymore. I couldn't keep the lie up.
So it was it was quite
really
a soulful
heartfelt.
thing.
Yeah, it was
that actually
really,
you had
yeah.
to do something.
Yeah,
So
I just didn't like myself anymore.
talk about turning that secret into your driving campaign, your true north, if you will, in terms of at what point did it suddenly turn into actually, I'm going to do something about this?
You know, sometimes, I don't know if this is your experience, but even when you've written your book, Mission, I think sometimes this stuff chooses you. You don't really have a choice. There's a brilliant Leonard Cohen quote about it's the cracks where the light gets in. And I think in a tough time, something brilliant can happen. And in my coming to terms and coming out of the closet as somebody who was registered blind, I don't know, it's just I realised that I had discriminated against people with disabilities by not owning my own. And so that's when I decided to do this huge childhood ambition, because I was told to take some time off work, and I'd always wanted to be Mowgli from the Jungle Book. And I was a massive fan of Mark Shan's Travels on My Elephant, and so I decided, well, I'll be Mowgli from the Jungle Book and go from a management consultant to an elephant handler, and I travelled 1,000 kilometres across India on the elephant. And that's what began this.
And so tell us about Colombia. I mean, we mentioned One Young World. Just tell us about the trek first that you
So I started this journey off with 1,000 kilometres across India on an elephant, which gave me a platform to learn about disability and how we could change that narrative. And after 17 years doing it, I'm 46 years old now, and I'm so impatient, and I wanted to have a global campaign on disability in business, which Valuable was. And I'd also, as well as wanting to be Mowgli from the Jungle Book, I wanted to be a cowgirl. So I had this date at One Young World, main stage, Bogota, in October, and Kate and Dave, and I said, please give me main stage for my campaign. And they said, okay, but don't be boring, because you're on just before Cher. And I said, I promise you I won't be boring.
Just before Cher.
So just before Cher. And I went, okay, I won't be boring. Well, I'll do another.
Oh, you didn't sing.
No, I didn't. So to get to that main stage, we launched our campaign Valuable in Colombia, and we trekked 1,000 kilometers from Cartagena to the main stage in Colombia in Bogota.
Right, so you
on
did
horseback.
It on horseback.
Yeah.
What an extraordinary achievement.
It was an extraordinary, it wasn't a great achievement that way. What it was an extraordinary opportunity to see that disability, whatever part of the world that you're in, people are living with disabilities, and this needs to have global attention.
So you finish that trek, you get onto that stage at One Young World.
Yeah.
Tell us what you told the delegates.
So yeah, at One Young World, I felt, well, like I travelled 1,000 kilometres on a horse, and by the way, I'm not a horse rider, so I was learning firsthand. And I think
nothing you can't do.
Yeah, well, no, that's just like grit. And I got on that stage, and I knew that Cher's people were looking at their clock going, get your one off. But I also knew that was an audience full of the next generation leaders. But I also knew, because Cher was on after me, that the green room had CEOs that were coming forward to hear Cher. So I literally bold as brass said, where are you?
What's the message then? That's the pressure, but what's the message?
Stand up. Stand up, leaders. Stop telling us we're inspiring. Stop saying this is a good day. If you really want to lead in this century, in this time, and you really believe in good business, in conscientious business, in serving the community to which you operate, and we need business leaders to stand here to recognise 15% of our global population, 1 in 7 of us, 1 billion, we need the Sheryl Sandbergs and Paul Pomans for this issue. And Paul Poman stood on the stage, which was amazing.
Caroline Casey, we're going to have to leave it there. What an inspiring story. Thank you, and good luck with the Valuable campaign.
Thank you.
One word for that. Wow! The campaigning Caroline Casey with a message to inspire action the world over. Living proof that even the most ambitious journeys start with a first step, or elephant trek, or saddling up for an epic adventure. But to win through, Caroline needs more people to share the journey, and that's where business comes in. This means approaching disability as a billion opportunities to realise and the potential for companies to make a difference. It's a call out that can only succeed if it gets an answer from 500 powerful firms with the resources to act. If Caroline's story tells us one thing, it's that the intention is great, but it's deeds that matter.